Thanks for your company. With me now, David Gazzard and Ben Oquist. Gents, great to see you both. Ben, federal ICAC. Again, the government questioned about it. It looks like there's no real interest in anything going near a New South Wales version of a corruption commission, certainly not from the government.
I think they're in a spot of bother on this issue because they have dragged their heels on it. I go back to the fact that back in 2017, the Australian Institute launched kind of a petition with 41 prominent Australians calling for federal ICAC. It's been building ever since then. Credit to Bill Shorten, who in January 2018 put it on the national agenda. Then credit to the Prime Minister for embracing the idea at the end of 2018, held that press conference to declare we're going to have one on the eve of the election because could see it would be politically difficult. But here we are 2 years later, we don't have one. And I think they're starting to look like they're dragging the train on corruption, and that looks bad for them. Helen Haines has got a bill coming into the federal parliament next week. I think that's going to put more pressure on them. I think they're going to have to flip on this and embrace the idea and get going with it, because notwithstanding that there's no kind of allegation that Scott Morrison is corrupt, he's looked like he's dragging the chain on it, and I thought he looked weak when he declares that we haven't been able to do it because we've had the entire public service working on COVID. Now, it's not the entire public service, and as many people have said, you can clearly walk and chew gum at the same time. I think they should get on with it, but there is going to be a big controversy over their model. The fact that it won't have public hearings, the fact that it can't self-refer and investigate whistleblower.
I'll get your analysis on that in a moment. I just want to bring in David Gazzard on a couple of those points. One, was that a viable argument, the PM saying, look, we had everyone focused on COVID-19, hence the delay? And two, do you think this is something that can hurt the government in a political sense, as Ben suggests?
No, I don't think anyone really is calling for it except for, you know, the advocates around the margins. I don't think there's a real groundswell of support for this at all. I think it's quite compelling to know that the federal government has an Auditor General. It's got a whole range of structures that are there in place already to do this. I think there is now compelling evidence out of the states that some of these watchdogs have got massive overreach, but of course no one can change anything because if you advocate against it, it looks like you're pro-corruption. So you have Gladys's, tapes coming out and being referred to in sort of titillating detail, people making their legal careers. Of course, the other really compelling reason to me is the federal government is not in the same service delivery space with all of those contracts that you get at a local government and state government level. This is more at the broader legal architecture above those contracts, and we've got the proper checks and balances in place to deal with that.
So you don't think there's an argument for a federal body like
there's no doubt.
With that sort of star chamber approach?
Without sort of, no, I don't. I don't think that. And I don't think really sort of now is the time. You are really sort of coming out of COVID. Is the Department of Social Security dealing totally with COVID? Probably not. But I think the main horsepower in behind government policy making certainly is.
What do you make of that argument, the fact that the service delivery, approval processes, all that sort of stuff happens at a state level, not a federal level? And also, do you see the arguments against the star chamber type of approach like in New South Wales?
You want to get the model right. It's got to be robust, but it's got to have public trust too. Public hearings have been effective. You don't need to hold a public hearing on every issue, but you need the Commission to have the discretion to hold them in public. Otherwise, you end up having a star chamber in secret, and you need to build that public confidence. That's worked. The Australian Institute's been looking at this issue for a number of years now, and David's wrong. It's consistently very popular with the community. Only 8% opposition and more like 80% for it. I do think it's a problem politically for the government. They themselves have recognised we need one. We're now debating over when it's going to happen and what the model's going to be. The federal government is pouring billions of dollars out the door at the moment, and I think it's just naive to think that corruption only ends at the state border and doesn't infect the Commonwealth level. But finally, David, just one second. I think politics is a good thing. I think politics is an important part of our democracy. I want to protect politics, and I think a federal ICAC can help protect politics and those people involved in politics, the 99% who do the right thing. A federal ICAC is about protecting and promoting them, not just weeding out the
We've
bad
got
people.
just 30 seconds, David.
You are never cleared by these bodies. You get referred to these bodies, you are never actually cleared. It is against the law to make vexatious and spurious references to ICAC. No one has ever been prosecuted on a bogus case to ICAC. People who are drawn in have their careers ruined because these bodies never actually formally clear them. They are totally laws unto themselves. So once you get drawn into that web, you can talk about the architecture around it. They are a star chamber, and it is very difficult once they're there to change them, or you look like you're pro-corruption. So of course people are going to say, yeah, I agree with the assertion. Everyone agrees with the assertion. I'm opposed to corruption. But whether you set this thing up when you've got the mechanisms in place at the moment and it damages things is another matter.
Let's get this draft legislation out there and the exposure legislation and make sure it's right. That's a problem that's been held by the government for 10 months. Let's get it out, debate it and get it right.
Ben and David, thank you very much. Ben Oquist, David Gazzard, thank you for...
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
Wages are growing at their slower, sustained pace.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.